Hello everybody, welcome to Calls. This is the 2023 Waste Management Phoenix Open Initial Research Show. Feels a little bit odd to be previewing the next tournament when last week's tournament still isn't completed. But that's what happens when Mother Nature doesn't cooperate and you have Monday finishes and all that stuff. But we are here to look forward to this upcoming week's tournament, the first of the premier full field events in this new look PGA Tour. So all of the big names will be here in Scottsdale, Arizona this week. So it's going to be a very exciting week, to be honest with you. I am looking forward to this. It should be a lot of fun to dive in analytically. The odds have been out for a couple of days, so if you haven't seen those, feel free to ask any questions you have in chat about those. We can run over those. But let's rattle through the intro so we can get into the really good stuff. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is simply the best tool out there for your money. It's going to make you a much smarter gambler and a much better DFS player. Go check them out. It's well worth your investment. In the description to the video, there are links to all of my social media, Twitter and Instagram. This is where I post the research that I find throughout the week, as well as on Twitter, posting my betting card for each week's tournament. And the link to Twitch is also there. This is where I do a lot of my in-depth research. I will also look back at previous weeks' mixed condition models and results and critique those. So that reminds me that the usual 10:30 a.m. Monday stream will be moved to Tuesday since Pebble Beach will not have completed by 10:30 tomorrow. So I'm going to move that stream to Tuesday morning, 10:30 a.m. Eastern. I will make sure to give you another reminder at the end of the show. But Twitch is where I do a lot of the in-depth research. It's also where I do some alternate content, if you will, baseball, DFS, gaming, a lot of that kind of stuff. So if you are interested in that content, give me a follow over there. And then finally, we're live. Chat is open. How are your Pebble Beach Pro-Am lineups looking? Mine are looking really, really solid, thanks to a very, very, very bold suggestion that I gave you all last week, and it's paying off tenfold in Peter Malnati. Now, certainly there have been some very wrong suggestions I have given you as well. Troy Merritt, Ted Potter Jr. I mentioned at 6K. Well, he played like a 6K player. Some of these other, Eric Van Rooyen was somebody I was fairly high on that didn't come through. I was also nowhere near Justin Rose, and he is leading the Pebble Beach Pro-Am at the moment. So I have enough that I can't claim a perfect week by any means, but thanks to Peter Malnati, at least at the time being, I'm having a very successful DFS week, and I still have an outside chance at an outright hit with Bo Hostler. I talked about him quite a bit last Wednesday. So I do want to hear from you all. How are your lineups looking for the Pebble Beach Pro-Am full week? How did your round 3 lineups shake out, especially with the delay that was unexpected? And then what are you looking forward to this week? Do you think Jon Rahm is the clear favorite? Do you think somebody else is somebody we need to keep an eye on? What stats do you think we need to pay attention to? All of that good stuff. Jump in chat. Let's have a fun, interactive show. But let's do our initial research for the 2023 Waste Management Phoenix Open. And we're going to start, as we do every Sunday night, with the GCSAA tournament fact sheet. James, how is it going? Thanks for jumping into chat there. How are your lineups doing? All of that stuff. What are you looking forward to for WMPO? If you hear me say WMPO, it's just an acronym, WMPO, Waste Management Phoenix Open, just to alleviate any confusion any viewers might have. But how has your week been, or at least how has your weekend went? How are your lineups, any wagers that you made, all of that good stuff. But we look at the GCSA tournament fact sheet for TPC Scottsdale. So we are in Scottsdale, Arizona. It is a par 71 that measures at 7,261 yards. So no long or short course filters we're going to be looking at this week. Right, pretty much smack dab in the middle of the barriers, if you will, for measurements of short and long courses. Stimp meter at 12. That is generally fast to even lightning, although when we look at historic course conditions, these have generally been fast greens. So we'll see how it plays out. Nothing to do specifically with Architect in Fantasy National, but Tom Weiskopf does have quite a few designs on the PGA Tour. So if you are indeed interested in other Tom Weiskopf designs, this is another one of his, along with Jay Morris, and then renovated in 2014 by Tom Weiskopf. So if you are intrigued by Tom Weiskopf designs, that is an angle you can certainly look at throughout the week. But looking at TPC Scottsdale specifically, green sizes pretty large, 7,000 square feet. So these are on average double the green sizes at Pebble Beach. Not a whole ton of fairway, and honestly not a lot of rough. There is quite a bit of native area here at WMPO. There's also quite a few holes with water in play. 6 holes with water in play. The greens say Poa Trivialis and Perennial Rye Overseed. That has always traditionally been classified as Bermuda. So we're going to be looking at Bermuda greens this week. The fairways, Perennial Rye and Fescue. Same with the rough. The rough is cut pretty short by PGA Tour standards, 2 inches. It's not the shortest, but certainly not penal at the WMPO. So that is a look at TPC Scottsdale from a GCSA tournament fact sheet. Again, just a quick review. Pretty large greens at just over 7,000 square feet. Not a whole lot of fairway and definitely not a lot of rough, but there is a bit of water in play. And we are going to be looking at Bermuda greens. At least that is what it's been classified as over at Fantasy National. So speaking of Fantasy National, let's go ahead and move on over there. And starting this week, especially once the Pebble Beach data gets loaded, I will probably start deferring to the start of the PGA Tour season as opposed to the entirety of 2022, unless we're looking at a specific filter like short courses, easy or difficult to par. But with none of that so far, again, just taking a quick look at the players that are in the field this week, we are looking at a very, very strong major-esque type field. What's up, Joey? Didn't see you there. I was distracted by the first time chat there. I am just going to have to ignore that. But Joey, welcome to chat. Thanks for jumping in. How are your lineups looking this week for the Pebble Beach Pro-Am? Any wagers? All of that stuff. How do you think it's going to shake out tomorrow? Quite interested to hear your all's take on that as well. But coming back to the WMPO, look at the names in the field this week. And again, this is the first full field premier event, meaning a $20 million total purse. So John Rahm, Taylor Montgomery, who has played extremely well this PGA Tour season, Max Homa, Tony Finau, Tom Kim, Scotty Scheffler, your defending champion, Colin Morikawa, Xander, Patrick Cantlay, Victor Hovland. Just it's a big field, a massive field. Not great. I had two of my guys missed the cut. Justin Rose found some youth this week. Yeah, I was nowhere near Justin Rose, and I will not be ashamed to say that I missed on him this week. I didn't like things analytically from him. He had never really played that course very well, at least in the last 5 years. He's playing well this week. It is what it is. Having said that, I still do have an outside chance at a win ticket with Beau Hossler. I believe he's sitting 3 shots back right now. He is going into the toughest part of Pebble Beach, but there is at least a chance. I got that to look forward to tomorrow. So you see the huge names here at the Waste Management Phoenix Open. It's just a who's who for the PGA Tour. Maybe not completely major-esque, since some of the live guys will be at the majors, DJ, Brooks, Bryson, etc. But the who's who of the PGA Tour is here this week at Scottsdale. So let's move to Fantasy Nationals course breakdown. And again, the first thing that I like to do is look for the 9th and 10th most difficult hole to figure out where par is. Well, 10th most difficult is slightly over par, and the 11th most difficult is slightly under. So the 10th is 200ths, the 11th is 200ths on either side of par. So that would indicate that this tournament might be a little bit more difficult than average. That is not generally how it plays, although it can. Not generally how it plays, especially because you have quite a few scoring opportunities. The drivable par 4 17th doesn't yield a whole lot of eagles. It does yield a fair share for a par 4, but you see it plays to a quarter of a shot under par. The par 5 15th plays to a quarter of a shot under par. You've got a whole par 5 13th that plays almost a half a shot under par, and then 4/10ths under par. So there are quite a few scoring opportunities here at TPC Scottsdale, where the toughest hole, yes, is fairly difficult at 1700ths over, but you quickly get to essentially single digits or into the hundredths in terms of difficulty. 1/10th and then 900ths, 600ths. So we'll see further on down in the breakdown that birdies quite heavily outweigh the bogeys. So even though the 10th and 11th most difficult hole are sandwiching par, does play generally a bit easier than that. We move to average strokes gained by shot type, and you see the putting actually outweighs the approach for the top 10s, but the biggest factor I want you to look at is the massive amount of off the tee here, especially for the top 10s, and that is going to be no different as we rise on the leaderboard. You see the off the tee still hovering around the 6/10ths. I'm actually going to back up. What was it for the top 10? So 0.52, so it does rise a little bit as you move to the top 5s, almost 6/10ths. Now the putting and approach almost equal, putting still slightly outweighing the approach, which means the approach actually is getting mitigated here a little bit. And then for your winners, there is a massive amount of weight in off the tee, 0.86. The strokes gained approach barely rises over 1. The putting, as you would expect, probably, at least from your winners, the highest. If you're going to be making putts, you're going to be winning. Around the green, kind of drops off for the winners. For the top 5s and top 10s, it's fairly high. But the emphasis here is this is a very high very high amount of off the tee for your top 5s, your top 10s, and your winners for TPC Scottsdale, and that'll really be emphasized in Microsoft Excel later tonight. We move to average strokes gained by hole by par. Let me back up to the top 10s. You can see the biggest scoring opportunities here are the par 5s, as per usual on the PGA Tour, but even so, the par 5 13th easiest hole plays to almost a half a shot under par, 3% eagle rate, fairly high. You got almost 2.5% eagle rate, almost 2.5% eagle rate, but lots and lots and lots of birdies on these par 5s, so they are the highest amount in terms of pure strokes gained numbers. We move to the top 5s. It starts to pull away even more from the par 4s. And then for the winners, the par 4s separate themselves from the par 3s at least, but you can see the par 5s are still the most important hole or par hole here at Scottsdale. Hole composition. We have a pretty balanced set of par 3s, one short, two medium length, and one long par 3. We do have the short, or drivable, I should say, not even short, although it is short, drivable par 4, 17th. But then every other par 4 here at TPC Scottsdale measures from 400 to 500 yards, evenly split. So when we move to Microsoft Excel, we'll see if there is a range that seems to be more important, and we'll really scrutinize that tomorrow on the data dive. And then every single par 5, at least on the scorecard, measures to 550 to 600. So my inclination would be that we are only going to look at this specific length of par 5s this week, since every single par 5 measures to that length. Approach shot distribution. Majority of approach shots come from 150 to 175. There is a fair amount of 200 plus. Again, just the par 5 scoring. They're all attackable. You're able to go at them in 2. But we'll see if 150 to 175 proximity is a major deciding factor in upper leaderboard success throughout the week. But that is the most prevalent approach shot length here at TPC Scottsdale. Historic cut line generally hovers around even, maybe even -1. Now last year's was -1. It has gotten down as far as -3. It has played as difficult as, I'll say +2 in recent-ish years, 2015, but generally hovers around even, maybe -1, which is certainly average for the PGA Tour. As I was talking about earlier, even though the par falls on the more difficult end of the spectrum, at least in terms of by the hole, 10th is slightly over, 11th most difficult hole is slightly under par, the birdies far outweigh the bogeys. 20% birdies here versus 14% bogeys. Few doubles just because of the water on the course, but won't add up to the birdies. So generally speaking, it plays more easy than difficult, but it is about average. Driving accuracy. Again, speaking to the relative little amount of fairway here at Scottsdale, driving accuracy a lot lower here than the average tour event. Having said that, distance is a lot higher. So some players, because the rough isn't penal, they don't mind missing the fairway. They're just trying to get as close to the hole as they can, literally every shot, instead of being forced to lay up. So distance, we'll see if that's a big, big factor, especially if everybody's seemingly hitting it further. We'll see. But accuracy is less here. Green and regulation percentage. Again, no surprise, these greens are larger than the average tour green. So slightly higher green and regulation percentage than the average tour event. Now, players having to scramble are much more successful here than at the average tour event. Almost 60% successful scrambling in Scottsdale versus 57.5% the average tour event. 3 putts per round, almost average tour event, almost, slightly less, 0.54 here, 0.55 at the average tour event. So 3 putts are a thing. 3 putts are a thing. We talked about the distance and then the proximity, actually quite a bit further away than the average tour event here. 31.5 feet for Scottsdale, 28, almost 29 feet for the average tour event. There is a look at TPC Scottsdale from a scorecard and graphical view. Before we go to the strokes gained page view or the home page at Fantasy National, let's take a look at the historic conditions. And you see last year, every single round played to average, every single round played to the medium length. So again, no filter to use for short or long courses. The green speeds have historically been fast. They have been fast every single round dating back to 2016 at least. So we're going to be looking at fast. It's always been classified as Bermuda, so we're going to look at fast Bermuda greens this week. Rough length, again, average, short, average. It is not penal. It is not difficult to play out of this rough here. And then, as I mentioned, it can play difficult from time to time, but generally speaking, it does play more easy than difficult. But overall, it's an average difficulty tournament at the WMPO. So with that, let's go ahead and move back to the strokes gained page view here at Fantasy National. Because we now know what greens we are looking at, let's filter on some fast Bermuda greens. And I think we're definitely going to have to go back to the beginning of 2022. Just not enough rounds so far in the PGA Tour season for that. Do we have enough for 2022? Yeah, I would say so. Brian Harman has 30. We got quite a few players in the 14, 15, 16 range, so not ideal, but it's going to be enough. So since the start of 2022, your top putters on fast Bermuda greens have been Kevin Kisner, Andrew Putnam, Ben Griffin, Davis Riley, Rory Sabatini, Terrell Hatton, Denny McCarthy, Scott Stallings, Alex Noren, and Brian Gay. So there's your top 10 putters, specifically on fast Bermuda, which is what these greens have always been, seemingly. At least every single round has been fast Bermuda dating back to 2016. Again, nothing to do with the course length filter. It is not short. It's not less than 7,200. Obviously not longer than 7,400. We'll take a look at wind tomorrow, if I remember, because I didn't last week. Nothing to do with wind yet. Nothing to do with the architect. Again, this is a Tom Weiskopf design. So if you are wanting to get some architect type data, you're going to have to do some research on Tom Weiskopf designs, but nothing specifically in Fantasy National. So instead, we could look at scoring relative to par average. I don't even feel terribly comfortable with that. So let's just take a look at some overall statistics since the start of the PGA Tour season. And we saw in the course breakdown just how much off the tee matters here at TPC Scottsdale. So since the start of this PGA Tour season, dating back to the Fortinet in the fall, your top off the tee players have been Kevin Yu, John Rahm, Keith Mitchell, Hayden Buckley, Scotty Scheffler, Will Gordon, Luke List, Gary Woodland, Cam Champ, and Jason Day. And it's going to be important to note that I've been fairly busy today, so I have not seen if there have been any withdrawals to the waste management field. So if you are aware of any withdrawals, please let me know, put it in chat. That way I'm not giving you false information tonight to begin your research. But I am just not aware of any at the moment. But there's your look at your top off the tee players. Let's take a look at our top strokes gained approach players. Even though it is somewhat nullified here in importance, it's still an important factor, maybe the most important factor on the PGA Tour. So, your top strokes gained approach players since the start of the PGA Tour season have been Tom Hoge, Nick Hardy, Tom Kim, Russell Knox, Matthew NeSmith, Siwoo Kim, Tony Finau, Max Homa, Colin Morikawa, and Joel Damon. We looked at putting. I'm going to save a little bit of around the green perhaps for tomorrow. I kind of want to look at Microsoft Excel tonight to figure out exactly what stats we want to look at. But what we do know is that the par 4s all fall between 400 and 500 yards minus the drivable par 4. So let's take a look at all par 4 performance and then take a look or scan across, if you will, and see if there's anybody that really stands out on the two particular lengths. Let's see. So players that are top 10 in both, there appears to be only one top 10 player that's in the top 10 in both lengths of par 4s most prevalent here at Scottsdale. That's Jason Day. He is 6th in both 400, 450 and 450 to 500. Some other notables here: Taylor Montgomery, number 1 in the shorter, top 20 in the other. Thomas Detry, 3rd and 20th. Now Maverick McNeely, who it's important to note, he did withdraw from the Pebble Beach Pro-Am due to injury. He did cite an injury to his left shoulder, I believe. So he perhaps could not be in the tournament. I just don't know yet. So if you are privy to any of the early withdrawals at the Waste Management, again, please put it in chat. But McNeely is the number 1 par 4 performer from 450 to 500 yards. Now Brian Harman has been top 20 in both of the lengths. Max Homa just outside the top 20 for both. He is 4th in one and 21st in the other. Andrew Putnam, top 25 in both. As soon as I scroll down, get my big head out of the way. Otherwise, it looks like it's guys or players are either very good to elite in one and middling at the other, or just kind of good at both. But something else that we can look at a little bit tonight. We know that every single par 5 measures from 550 to 600 yards, at least on the scorecard here at TBC Scottsdale. So your top performers on par 5s from 550 to 600 yards since the start of the PGA Tour season have been Charlie Hoffman, Stefan Jaeger, Keegan Bradley, Colin Morikawa, Aaron Wise, Wyndham Clark, Joel Damon, Scott Stallings, Kevin Tway, and Ben Griffin. So there's some names to perhaps circle or pay particular attention to as you start your research this week. Last thing that I want to look at in Fantasy National for the evening, as we generally do, let's take a look at the tournament history tab. This is, again, for the past 5 years at the tournament, and because this tournament has been at TPC Scottsdale since I can remember, we don't have to cut out any years. So, your top performers the past 5 years in terms of pure strokes gained total at the Waste Management Phoenix Open. Justin Thomas leads the way. You see he does not have anything outside of a tie for 17th. So every finish inside the top 20. Same goes for Xander Schauffele. He has every single finish the last 5 years inside the top 20. Your defending champion is Scotty Scheffler. He missed the cut his first year and then tied for 7th and a win. So he has played this event very, very well. Gary Woodland is a former winner in 2018. Ricky Fowler won in 2019. Webb Simpson in 2020. The 2021 winner not allowed to participate. It is Brooks Koepka. But some other players who have performed very, very well here. John Rahm, much more consistent. Nothing in terms of very high finishes or podium finishes like JT and Xander, but every finish the past 5 years for Jon Rahm has finished between 9th and 13th. So very consistent elite form here at the Waste Management Phoenix Open. Matt Kuchar has played this event very well, 4 for 5. He did miss the cut last year, but has generally played this event very well. Ricky Fowler, again, a former champion. Hideki has played this event very well. Max Homa is 4 for 4. Billy Horschel is 5 for 5. Again, anytime you're on Bermuda greens, you got to think about Billy Horschel. JT Poston, 4 for 4. Again, this is not a short course, but it's not long, so JT Poston generally fares better on shorter, easier courses. This is neither classified as short. I wouldn't classify it as easy, although it is on the easier side of the spectrum. So it doesn't really surprise me that he's played well here. Maybe it's a little surprising how well he's played, but I can see it. Alex Noren, 3 for 3. Webb Simpson, 3 for 4. So there's a look at some of the players that have performed very well the past 5 years here at TPC Scottsdale. The other end of the spectrum, players who just haven't. Kyle Stanley, 1 for 5. Tyler Duncan, 0 for 5. Kelly Craft, 0 for 4. Siwoo Kim, surprisingly, 3 for 5 in making the cut. 2 middling to clunker finishes, although he does have close to a top 25. So, his 2 missed cuts must be really, really bad. He has just generally not played this event well. Ryan Moore. Let's see. I'm trying to get guys who have at least played it more than once or twice. Nick Taylor, Dylan Fratelli, Brian Gay, 2 for 5. Troy Merritt, somebody who I was pretty high on last week. That clearly bit me in the ass. Happens. Patrick Rogers, only 1 for 5 here. Roy Sabatini, 2 for 5. So there's a look at some of the players who haven't played well here at TPC Scottsdale the past 5 years. With that, we're going to move on over to Microsoft Excel. All right, so you see for Phoenix, we talked about it. We saw it in the graph. Talked about it going through the players, the strokes gained page view. Off the tee, 34.5% more important here than the average full field course. It's a pretty big deal here. It's a pretty big deal. This actually might be the biggest number other than Mexico, which is only 1 year. Okay. The Barbasol generally is very, very off the tee related. That's a very, very easy tournament, so no surprise there. But yes, so far in this PGA Tour season, the Waste Management Phoenix Open is the most important off the tee tournament that we have covered. You see strokes gained approach, actually a little bit less than the average full field course. Still important. Strokes gained approach is the biggest factor on the PGA Tour, at least I believe it's the biggest factor, but not as much weight. Around the green, a little bit higher. I'm not so sure it's going to matter a whole lot this week. I think this is a bit misleading. Putting, a lot of this is coming from your winners. Even for the Waste Management Phoenix Open, players who are gaining distance relative to the field are having a lot of success. So the Waste Management Phoenix Open, driving distance is going to matter. You see fairways are exactly full field course average. Greens, almost 4.5% more important. So in the driving metrics, it looks like it's distance, maybe a little bit of the greens in regulation, although these greens are bigger, so I'm a little concerned advocating for that at the moment until we get into some further analysis. Scoring wise, birdies gained slightly outweighing the bogeys avoided. Okay, I can stand with that. Moving into the par 3s, 4s, and 5s, you see that the par 3s, and we kind of saw it graphically as well, they kind of get mitigated in importance. They are slightly more important in these two ranges. If I do anything with par 3s, it'll be in total, but right now on a Sunday evening, and of course I haven't made the mixed condition model for this week's Waste Management Phoenix Open, there doesn't look to be a lot of need for par 3s. Maybe 5% at most. We move to the par 4s, however, and we note that they are 10% more important than the average full field course. Now, you do have one hole that measures to this length on the scorecard. You don't want to put a whole lot of weight into that because it's only one hole. No holes measure to this length on the scorecard, so this is just when tees and pins get moved around. But look at the big contrast. Oh, shucks. I hit the wrong key. Look at the big contrast between the two lengths of par 4s here at TPC Scottsdale. Remember, you have 5 each from 400 to 450 and from 450 to 500. So the 450 to 500 look to be astronomically more important. So at least early on in your research this week, I would advocate you look at 450 to 500 par 4s. And then par 5s, again, just we saw this graphically, but it's always great to see the data back this up. Par 5s, a little bit less important than the average full field course. Again, when tees and pins get moved around, but every single par 5 on the scorecard measured to this length, they're almost 50% more important. So we're going to be looking at 550 to 600 par 5s this week for TPC Scottsdale. Let's take a look at proximities. Again, the most prominent proximity is 150 to 175, and that's a pretty big number. But look at total prox, and that's where I think I'm probably going to fall this week. Again, these greens are bigger than the average tour green. The average proximity for green in regulation is quite a bit further. So I think total prox might be the way to go this week. But we'll definitely scrutinize that tomorrow in the Data Dive show. But right now it looks like total prox is the way to go, especially since all of these proximities are important compared to the average full field course. So there's a look at TPC Scottsdale in relation to other full field courses. Going to be a little bit of a shorter show, unless there are some other questions or wager advice, considering the odds are out for the waste management. And I just realized, actually, I think that was zoomed in enough for you all. I went back to that. I know this was not zoomed in, so I did. Let me know in chat, is it okay to read? I know I try to zoom in for you all a little bit, because it's actually fairly large on my monitor screen. Just want to make sure you're able to read it. We take a look at historical performances here at TPC Scottsdale. Again, in the past 5 years, as this is the tournament history tab from Fantasy National, just brought over, and their strokes gained are attributed across the particular stats. So you see Patrick Cantlay. He has played this event one time in the past 5 years. It was last year. He finished runner-up. So Tagala was third. But Justin Thomas averages a top 10 finish here. Xander averages a top 10 finish here. John Rahm averages an 11th place finish here. So I'm going to remove the players who have only played it once. I want to see what the players are doing the best here that traditionally year over year have played this event the best. We'll go down to the top 40. So Nate Lashley here, that is 19 players. So not exactly a perfect 20 players, an average of a top 40. It's not perfect, but is what it is. So players that have averaged a top 40 that have played it more than one time in the past 5 years, they're averaging 1.3 off the tee. They are at 1.6 on approach. And again, the approach bar did outweigh the off the tee, but that is a very, very close margin there between those two. Around the green, a 0.6. Putting is a 2.2. So it is saying that putting is going to be drastically the most important. I don't know if it's drastically the most important, but we certainly are going to put some emphasis on fast Bermuda greens. We scroll across for driving distance. Other than Brendan Todd, who has only played it twice, but look at the players that have consistently, year over year, 3, 4, 5 years, have performed well. Justin Thomas, Xander, John Rahm, even Sung Jae, who's not the longest hitter, is still positive. Hideki, Max Homa, Scotty Scheffler. Now, Matt Kuchar's never going to be long. Corey Connors isn't long, and he's gaining distance here at the Waste Management Phoenix Open. Distance is going to be a decent factor this week. I really, truly believe it's going to be a decent factor. But we'll scrutinize some previous leaderboards tomorrow in the Data Dive show and really get a feel for that. Fairways for players that have finished inside or averaged a top 40, that's a 2.6. For good drives, that's a 2.0. And greens is a 2.4. So it's actually saying that fairways is the most important of those three. We saw that fairways was exactly course average, full field course average. And players don't hit fairways as often here. So take that with a little bit of grain of salt. Good drives, maybe. Greens, maybe. I'm still thinking just in this tab, in the driving tab, probably just going to focus distance only. But that's what this week's research is for. We also saw in Excel that birdies slightly outweighed the bogeys. So we'll take a look at that. We have a 2.2 and a 2.4. So of the players that have have consistently played this tournament and consistently played it at an elite level, these players here, they've actually been more bogey avoidance. You have to come down to Hideki before you get more birdies than bogeys. So Hideki and Max Homa are the two that are more birdies than bogeys. But the elite players here, JT, Xander, John Rahm, even Sung Jae to a lesser extent, have been more bogey avoidance. I'm going to skip par threes. They just don't seem all that important here. We looked at par fours and a pretty good amount of green here, but look at where the heavy concentration of green is in the par fours and the amounts. 450 to 500. Every single player here that has averaged a top 40 over multiple years has been positive on these 450 to 500 yard par fours. Every single one is positive there. And for even more clarification, Molinari is a -2. Then you have another string of players that are positive, all the way down to the players that are averaging a top 45 here. So, extremely important factor as we start our research this week in the 450 to 500s. Extremely important factor. And then a couple other things we want to look at. 550 to 600 par 5s. Again, these are the most scoreable holes. These are going to be the holes where the most strokes gained are happening. I still think the 450 to 500 is going to be where I put the majority of percent in a mixed condition model. I think that's what's going to separate a lot of your good performers from great performers. But you still have a lot of important factor here in the 550 to 600s. So this is 550 to 600 par 5s, I should say. So this is a 0.9, whereas as a 0.3. So yeah, I mean, we're going to just only look at 550 to 600 par 5s, but I really do think it's going to pale in comparison to the 450 to 500 par 4s. And then lastly, let's look at procs. I am curious a little bit about some procs data here. that's a lot of positive and high green for the players who have been elite here at the Waste Management Phoenix Open. A lot of high total procs. Now the 150 to 175 looks to be a little bit of a mixed bag. Sung Jae has been great from that distance here. Xander's is slightly negative, but you do have a lot of heavy green up here as well. So take that for what it's worth. But I do see a decent amount of success here, especially of the players that have averaged a top 20 or so in total procs. And you got some more good to middling performances in here. Let's see. Brennan Todd has been atrocious in total procs. Matt Kuchar's been bad, I guess. Noren's been bad. But Brian Harmon hasn't been terrible. Yes, it's not good, but he hasn't been terrible. And then all of these other numbers are positive in some way, shape, or form. So total procs looking to be a thing. 150 to 175, especially up here at the top. Okay. For that matter, the 200 plus up here at the top. So, again, a little bit of a shorter show this evening. Went through it a little quicker than I guess what I normally do. A reminder that tomorrow there will be no stream on Twitch as the Pebble Beach tournament concludes tomorrow. So nothing to do with analyzing last week's mixed condition model or anything like that. Instead, I'm going to move Monday or tomorrow's usual stream to Tuesday morning, 10:30 a.m. Eastern, for Pebble Beach analysis. How I did with my lineups, how the mixed condition model fared, all of that stuff, plus the winter research and all that. So that'll move to Tuesday morning, 10:30 a.m. The Data Dive show will still be tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern, here on YouTube and on Twitch. And then Wednesday, of course, will be the DFS Tactics. But with that, I think that is going to wrap up the initial research show for the 2023 Waste Management Phoenix Open. Joey and James, thanks for jumping in chat. Really appreciate it. Appreciate the support. You all have been here consistently supporting the channel. It's been great. And to everyone else out there that watches, posts comments, subscribes to the channel, likes the videos, it's always appreciated. Love what I do. And hopefully able to give you a solid analysis leading up to the week at hand. So for all of the wagers that haven't been concluded yet at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am, for all of the DFS contests you've entered that haven't been concluded yet at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am, and until I see you tomorrow night for the Day to Die show, may all your bets be profitable.